Kevin, man, you mentioned earlier that we still have bond payments left on North Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
Man, how many more years left do we have of those bond payments?
Those are 30-year, and I want to say they end in about 10 years.
Was that for the first phase?
First phase, yeah, it was first phase, and it was combined with the Commerce Park purchase of the land. So,
okay.
And the first phase was lighting on Main Street and sidewalk improvements.
Sidewalks and the trees that everybody runs over now. So.
Can everybody hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
Hey, good. Okay. Sorry about that. I apologize. Hey, so sorry if we moved on, but can I just make one comment about what Derek was talking about in terms of, I do remember, Derek, the last time we talked about this, the issue Mike brought up, that you were saying that you and Mindy thought that whatever could help the most number of people in terms of that walkability. So, I mean, I think the idea of prioritizing a section may not be a bad idea if, like Jack was saying, if that's something that could happen. So, just, I guess I agree with that sentiment from a month ago. So.
And Seth Dorman and myself, we had a brief conversation with Mary Hoy. Mary is the person that we contact for our safety projects through ODOT, and we talked to her a little bit about the safe
routes to school.
Safe routes to school.
Mm-hmm.
And she was, she was very, very informative for us. And Seth wrote a lot of stuff down. But I was mainly telling her about the area around Noranda School, and especially around our schools that don't have sidewalk. I watched a father taking his daughter to school, or walking his daughter to school, and they were coming down Willow Creek, and of course there's no sidewalk there. And she thought that was very doable, that we could possibly get something, some funding like that around that area. The problem you run into is the residents that live there aren't a big fan of sidewalks. Some of them don't want them sidewalks in their front yard. So that's a hurdle we'll have to jump, I'm sure. But I think there is a funding source to do that. And like Jack had said earlier, maybe that route over to Main Street might be, through that Honeybrook Platte, through that, around that Noranda area and out to Garver and that direction. So I could see that being, making this city a whole lot more walkable if we had just finished that section that was in there. And there's a lot of missing sidewalk in there around that school.
Do we want to move on to the next one, the central cores? I know we're talking about, these kind of can lend it to kind of bordering on different goals here. But Seth, can we move on to the number two central cores topic? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Anybody have any of these recommendations either should come out or you feel strongly about?
I think for what we had, everything would kind of be an overall lower cost and a lower hanging fruit per se on these. When you get into street signage, street furnishings, things like that, and then also, if you look on here, just creating the standards there as well for everything. Obviously, when you put all this together, it obviously will amount to a decent amount of money, but I think when it's kind of pieced apart and done over time, as we maybe look to improve, this central core of around Main Street or one around, the historic neighborhood, I think that it's one that is kind of overall lower cost and can definitely be spread out over time. It kind all these kind of most of these under central cores I would look at, and Kim, please jump in if or anyone else, kind of all goes together. And I know it's easy to say, but the lower ones here you get into speed study, crosswalk improvement there, and that's more of just from a planning aspect. But I think when we get into things that are physical, tangible items like the furnishings, the signage, I think those are stuff that we could start doing pretty quick in some areas. If you look at the furnishings there, we're talking a variety of things: benches, trash cans, the dog litter stations, things like that, that you see in a lot of areas where you have high foot traffic or want to increase that, just, some really creature comforts. And it gives some just identity and that goes in with the standards of everything is going to be, this color or have, the Clayton logo like this, things like that. And I think, jumping in and with Randy's department purchasing the sign equipment within the last couple of years, I think that's going to definitely take down the overall cost of this significantly with the signs, with us being able to do those in-house.
Hey, Brendan, tell me if you disagree with this, honestly, because I don't want to put words in the committee's mouth. And Kim, you as well, too, because you both of you really spent the most of the time on this. But I got the sense that when we talked about reducing the speed or, making the speed more amenable to pedestrians and to bike traffic, that there seemed to be some level of support on the subcommittee for that, or on the committee. So tell me if you would agree with that theory or not.
I think so. Yeah. In our discussions, Kim, any different than that?
No, I think we were thinking that would be a necessary thing to do if we were going to increase the pedestrian traffic. So I think we were all in agreement with that.
Yeah, I think a lot going around Central Cores was, like a lot of them comes down to pedestrian traffic. And I know there's a lot in other parts of Plain Clayton where it talks about, some areas where, maybe like, some areas along Main Street where some medians are added, those things that kind of create a natural, something natural on roads that reduces speed as well as, as well as possibly lowering the speed limits there. Of course, we can always put in a roundabout and make Mr. Gorman scream and shout during council meetings, but that's for another time.
Hey, Randy, can you, because from a development standpoint, I think reducing the speed limit makes tons of sense. Not just for pedestrians, but for just slowing traffic down so that they're able to see the businesses that are along the corridor. I don't think you'll ever see from a development department standpoint that, I don't think from development staff, we would ever fight reducing the speed limit. Randy, just for the sake of argument, what does it take to reduce the speed limit on one of our right-of-ways?
I think that's more directed towards Amanda, I'm sure, but I know it has to go. Amanda, feel free to chime in here. I think it's got to go in front of council to do it.
It would ultimately have to go in front of council, and depending on the road would also depend on who would do the speed study and who would make the ultimate decision on whether or not the speed could be reduced. I think along 48, we would have the ability to reduce the speed within our boundaries, but I think that we would have to work with the state as well as, with the city with getting that done.
That had come up once at a council meeting. Council voted they didn't want to reduce the speed on Main Street. I think it's when they were doing out on Putnam and Haber, and those speed limits, 48 came up, and for some whatever reasons they were kind of adamant about not reducing it.
It's a new day, Kevin.
But and that's what I was going to say. But wasn't there a different makeup of council at that point?
It was before I was here. Yeah.
I've heard the stories, and
Yeah.
I think I understand.
You got the main person there still that was adamant against it.
And I understand that. I think, again, from a development standpoint, there's significant sections of 48 south of, the Northmont area that has a speed limit of 35.
Yeah.
Same exact layout, same exact street design, and the speed limit's 35. So, my guess is that I think there's probably a valid argument for that reducing it from 45 to 35 doesn't make, horrible sense in the world. Again, obviously, it's ultimately up to council, but, maybe it's something that we can discuss, and start working towards in a year or two. Maybe there's a different makeup. I don't know, but
I know we got a different mayor now, so.
I was going to say, no pressure on any of the council members that are on this meeting, but I think it does. I think maybe we have some different arguments today than we had 6 or 7 years ago. If we're really looking at concentrating on creating those walkable corridors and those central cores, we're trying to increase the visibility of our existing businesses and future businesses. Maybe it makes sense, to kind of revisit that. And we have a study that supports it. Looking at it from a different lens, maybe it's something we could get support for.
All right, Main Street, and then, National around the high school, in that section of National, when you get to, the high school, Hogue, and things like that. That'd be the only two areas. That's really the two areas, especially Main Street, that it's kind of been discussed. Obviously, around the high school area, around National, is a lot around future development.
Well, yeah.
Whereas Main Street is, obviously what we have currently, but then future as well.
And the thing on National is, as soon as you hit Klebs, it goes down to 35.
Right.
I mean, it's from Klebs onto, for as far as the city limits is until Diamond Mill is 45, but the rest of National is already 35.
Yeah,
so,
and it's still pretty wide there. So it kind of,
yeah.
You don't get a different feel for that section. You just get a lower speed limit. Mm-hmm.
Well, and then reducing the speed on North Main could prepare folks for, if we do put a roundabout or something in there, it's already slowed the traffic down somewhat prior to that, if you go that route.
Mm-hmm. I'm all for lowering the speed limits on both of those two main streets there, 48 and National. My problem with doing it on 48 is that it really, if we just went out and just did it, let's just say the council does it and the state goes along with it and everything. I think we could enforce it and all that, but I don't think it would match the streetscape there. I mean, when you go out there, that looks like a racetrack, basically. It's whatever it is, 6 or 7 lanes wide, much of it with no businesses, no curbs, nothing like that, no median, no roundabouts or anything like that. And I think that's where we'll get trouble from the community's buy-in. They're going to say, well, why are we doing this here?
Mm-hmm. And people that like me that have a lead foot.
Yeah,
tickets.
Well, there's a lot of people that really drive fast up and down there. Like I said, I think it's important that we do slow it, but I just don't know if we'll get buy-in from the community. And, do we want our, officers sitting down there just writing ticket after ticket? Because I think you'd see that, maybe, some people would slow down, but I don't think it matches what the street is.
Yeah.
So
I think you'd have to do it. I think you would have to do it at the same time that you're making other improvements.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
I think when you start, looking at doing phase 2 of the streetscape, that's when you start having these conversations. I agree with you 100%, Mike, that if we would just go down there tomorrow and reduce the speed limit, you're going to have a lot of people saying that you're just trying to increase revenue for the city through speeding tickets.
Right.
That's going to be the argument. I agree with you 100%. I think if we do it, and then, we do it while we're implementing phase 2, and maybe, and again, this is a pie in the sky, wish list here for me that I'm speaking about, is that, we're doing phase 2, and then maybe we're looking at doing a new street design for one section that, we put a median in, but then, maybe then we have a story to tell and why it makes sense to reduce the speed limit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Jack and Mike, I don't want to play, or I guess maybe I'll give a slight, maybe a contrary opinion here. I think that 48, I think 48 needs to feel a little more pedestrian and a little more kind of foot friendly, because, and you're right, now people probably could say that they're, like, why are you doing that? Because it doesn't feel like that at all. But maybe if it was done, it could lead to some development that's not there, right? It could kind of slow it down. And I'll tell you, I don't know if, and I should know this, but I've noticed that and it might be since COVID started, but the number 7 RTA bus runs up 48 like every 20 minutes. I've ridden it downtown probably 4 or 5 times to go to work. And I just think, the idea that maybe not to say a cliche, if you build it, they'll come, but, but I think that maybe there's an argument to make that if we could slow it down, that maybe it could lead to some development that could help the city. But I know there's a long way between that thought and getting there. I get that.
I think that Amanda is right, though, that because it is a state-owned roadway, that it would ultimately be up to the state to do that kind of study, I think, and then decide whether or not they would allow us to change that speed limit.
In my limited experience with lawsuits involving cities and roadways constructed by states or owned by the states, usually if it goes through your city, that becomes your responsibility.
Including speed?
Yeah, that would definitely be something I would want clarification on before presenting it to council. But in my experience, cities get themselves into trouble when they expect the state to maintain and manage the roadways that go through their cities. Usually when it's in your city, it's yours.
And maybe Randy can answer this better, but I believe the reason that we would need to look at the state is that we do receive state funds for certain things along North Main Street. So there is a certain expectation sometimes that there's certain, lane widths and things like that are maintained along 48 because we do receive state funds. So I think that's the aspect that we probably need to look at with the state is, are you going to support some of these ideas that we're going with? And then can we continue to receive the state funds that do support some of our improvements and what have you? But I could be speaking out of turn. Randy, does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, I've talked to Randy Chevalier about this. He's a deputy director over at District 7, and he at one time had said, go do what you want. I think what he truly meant was, to go ahead and do your own safety study and then, or traffic study, and then make your determination, and then you can do what you want. I don't think they'll limit you because, let's face it, when they did 48 project, they did it through our city, through Inglewood, through Union, and there's 35 and 45. The speed limits didn't matter so much. Now the widths, Jack may be correct. If there may be a certain criteria on widths, I don't know. If you tried to reduce that road down, I'm not sure. I'd have to ask them, but it won't stop the funding, I don't believe.
That's good.
One idea I drive Main Street just about every day from Garber to 3rd Street downtown. And one thing that I think might help reduce the speed without a speed limit is instead of having the left turn lane, what options would we have to put up a median and then make a single direction left turn, not the, I know some people refer to it as the suicide lane or whatever, where you turn in both directions on the left. Or we can maybe put up a median or make it just a single direction left turn lane in the middle. That way traffic either has to stop or slow down as people make that left-hand turn instead of using the center lane as a merge lane like a lot of folks attempt to use it. I think that's where we could maybe find a cheap solution to start slowing things down is our control of the left turns, but I don't know if that is even worth considering, or if I'm dead wrong on the subject. I'm not sure.
One thing about that I like about that too, that idea is when you combine it with medians, the medians also make it easier for pedestrians to cross because you can go.
You're right.
You could have a median. You can got a little place there where you don't have to sprint across the whole large street there. At least you could stop and wait for the other traffic till that way's clear too. So I really like the median idea all up and down, especially 48. I think that's a no-brainer in my mind.
Randy, does that make snow and ice removal any more difficult when you start putting in medians, or is that wide enough that it's not really an issue?
It's wide enough. I don't think it would be an issue. Now, we do like to, obviously, the smaller the roads, we like reduction because less chance of or less time to plow that. I've plowed out there before. It takes you 6 passes just to get the snow from the center out. So it's a nightmare that way. But No, not terribly. You know, on the big snows, yeah, you might have an issue with it, you know, piling up in the center, but not a terrible issue.
Well, I guess there's probably a couple different ways to get there. Maybe it's not just one way, to Derek's point and to Mike's point too. So, well, good. I'm glad we talked about that. Is there anything else under? Can I throw one thing? And I hate to sound like a broken record, but the last meeting I kind of brought out this issue of just kind of prioritizing any open space, whether it's on North Main or on the corridors that Brendan and Kim identified, the main corridors. And just, even if the city doesn't have those properties in control, just maybe try to figure out ways to work with the owners of those properties to repurpose those, those lots. We've talked about this, Amanda, we've talked about this in the prior meetings that, Montgomery, I kind of use this example because I'm kind of familiar with this, but Montgomery County's got that couple acre footprint in front of Stillwater Center that's right on North Main. And Jack's talked to him, and there's some, it's not as simple as, as, hey, can we have that, right? There's some issues there, but
They'll
I
definitely
guess,
sell it to us with no problem.
Yeah.
But they won't let us market it. So
yeah, I guess I'd like to see somewhere in here that the city would really identify those properties that have the most potential along those central cores for development, even if we don't have control over it. So if we could put that in there somewhere.
I think that makes perfect sense, and I think we see definitely eye to eye on that particular issue, Dan. It's something that we're actually putting into the 5-year economic development plan as a specific task and goal. So yeah, we definitely agree with you on that.
Hey,
All right,
I got one more thing before we leave this topic,
Okay.
if we're getting ready to do that. But I want to go back to kind of how Brendan started this conversation, because this does look like to me like there's some things that we can do right away. And as as I try to tell everybody, I'm impatient when it comes to these things. But things like the signage and things, we have, hopefully, cross our fingers, we have some new development coming into the city. And it would really be nice if we could just start with that. I mean, that would give us a perfect place to start if we have everything developed, and I think we already have the ability to build it. And
When you say when you say signage, are you talking about wayfinding signage, or are you talking about identification signage for the city? What?
I'm talking about anything that we want to use, anything that we want to put in our standards books.
Okay.
All right.
Kind of all the above, Jack.
Yeah.
So we're talking about directional signage, and identifying there. So even as we've identified here, 5 different cores. So I mean, even potentially of putting something, here's the main, City of Clayton Main Street, just some sign that identifies that, and keeping, obviously with saying that we're going to create a standards, keeping to that with a lot of things of, okay, here's the color, and that will go into some of the furnishings there as well. But yeah, with the signage, obviously we don't want to just blanket and have signs everywhere, but you look at a lot of communities and you kind of know when you get into them, especially along main areas, and what they would consider their cores. Like, you see those signs to know, okay, you're in this city and here's this section of this city.
I think that's something that's very easily accomplished. Like you guys just said, it's actually something we've been working on. I don't know if you guys remember, about 2 years ago, we actually presented some different elevations of some different sign packages for you guys to look at and kind of give us some feedback. And Luke from Randy's department has been working on that. And I know he's got it with Seth also. So really, that's something that we could probably roll out pretty quickly in terms of getting some ideas of what you guys are looking for, because it's something that we've been working on. Everything with the tornado, and then COVID kind of has pushed everything back, because when we first introduced those to you, it was right before the tornado hit. So then everything's been pushed back. But that particular, trying to have some sign standards and what have you, and I think that goes along with the parks and improving the open green space and all those types of things too. So, and the government facilities and what have you. So, and those are all things we've been having internal discussions about for 2 or 3 years. So I think that's a task that could be easily implemented rather quickly.
Yeah. Can that
Yeah, I would,
include?
I would agree that that is definitely the low hanging fruit. I think that's the one where you could grab relatively quick and go. One of the other things I wanted to mention as well, I had another talk with with Mary Hoy again today about some of the, and if you guys have noticed them in Inglewood, I know West Milton's got them too. I call them the keyboard crossing areas. We've got a lot of areas where there may be no sidewalk, but there may be sidewalk on the other side of the road. We have a lot of crosswalks that are kind of, I won't call them outdated because they're still legal crosswalks. However, they do look a lot better when you do that keyboard. I call it the keyboard, striping across the crosswalk, make it a little bit more safety, a whole lot more noticeable. She said there is a systematic safety program coming real soon to help cities pay for that. So if you need to upgrade those areas, that's another area we can possibly upgrade our crossings and stuff. So
Yeah.
And the ones you're talking about, Randy, do they have flashing beacons or is it just wider crosswalk striping?
no, and the closest one to us obviously is that one right up there at Winger and Taywood. I mean, they have them right there. So there's no flashing beacons there, but they do have the very noticeable crosswalks there, and I think they stick out real well.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack and Randy, within the kind of the signage program would be possible to put in some of that furniture aspect as well, the park benches, combine ashtrays, dog litter, receptacles, things like that. And you see in a lot of areas where you have an increase of pedestrian traffic.
Yeah, I think from a development standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. And I think we started that with the parks already. So, I mean, that's something that's easy to piggyback on. We put new park benches in. They were installed last year, I believe, right, Randy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And then the year before that, we put the animal waste receptacles and we put brand new trash cans with concrete pads that Randy's guys put in. So, we've already started that in the park. So I think bringing that into the central course makes a lot of sense. I think it's probably something that we could look at. There's some grants out there that can assist us with that. We pay for all the animal waste receptacles and trash cans through, I think 75% of that was through a grant through Montgomery County through solid waste. So
Right.
I think there's some easy opportunities there, to be honest with you, Brendan. And yeah, I think that's another low hanging fruit.
Awesome.
Hey, Randy, those crosswalks you're talking about, the keyboard and we've all seen with the flashing lights. Is that something that would also lend to kind of some lower speeds because people just would get used to those and they'd be watching for them?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, it automatically does when you see those in place. I think it would, yes.
Okay, good. Okay, Mike, Seth, can we move on to the third one?
We can jump to 4 if you'd like. Mike and I are Great Streets. Do you and Seth want to talk connected parks?
Why don't you guys go, and then I know Seth's child was a little bit ill tonight, so he might be. I'll see if he can pop back in. But
in and out.
Hey, Seth.
All right.
Yeah, I told him I said that's the most important job for him tonight, is take care of his child. So. But yeah, once you guys go ahead and start, we'll go to number 4, then we'll do number 3 at the end.
Yeah, well, Mike and I and Brendan and Kim saw a lot of intersection of thought between Great Streets, and Central Cores. A lot of the stuff on our list, I think, is some lower hanging fruit, a lot of planning initiatives that we've kind of called out. But one of the big ones that we've talked, and we've already hit on this tonight, is a sidewalk infill program, street light program, both for primary roads like Main Street, National, and then a streetlight program for residential streets. And I've got sort of a candidate for a test case for residential streets. So I've recently been in, Jack and I have both been in conversations with Catherine Springer in the old village, or the historic village of Clayton. And she has indicated that, and I think on Talmadge, they've got, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, but maybe 3 or 4 Cobra head lights along the length of Talmadge in that area. And she has said at nighttime, it's kind of an unsafe condition if you're walking back from a neighbor's or if you're just taking a walk. There's really low levels of lighting. And so I've shared with her some ideas I had for a potential residential area streetlight fixture that I'd kind of like to see maybe as a standard for the city. And I wondered if maybe that would be something we could think about as a test case to kind of work on Talmadge and put in some street lighting with the kind of the new, more decorative kind of Clayton branded fixture. So that's an idea that Mike and I have had, and then I kind of expounded on it with the idea of the village of Clayton. Gateway program, kind of looking at city entries, city facilities, seeing where we might be able to kind of let people know that, hey, you're in Clayton. I mean, we've got the one I think at Westbrook in 48, but looking at other areas where we could do that, and then just more standards for street lighting, kind of putting books together or packages together for street lighting, street furnishings. Couple big ones in there are the infrastructure analysis. We all know that we've got in some areas we've got deficiencies for water and sewer, and maybe looking at overhead utilities, and where this was one that Mike called out, that where we could take the overhead utilities and bury them where possible, just because it's it makes for a more attractive corridor. Possibly doing a City of Clayton Thoroughfare plan. For years we've been using Montgomery County's Thoroughfare plan, but just kind of identifying on our main roads what right of way we'd like to ultimately have, and then as developments occur, we can acquire some of that frontage right of way, as developments come through. City of Clayton Access Management Plan. I always give the example of State Route 49 Salem Avenue. If you have a residence on 49, you currently can have a driveway directly onto 49. So kind of looking at things like that. And then just green infrastructure study, and that's more of, it may not apply to all areas, but looking at ways to do stormwater and things that don't involve, pipes, maybe bioswales, other landscaping options for runoff and things of that nature. So that's kind of what we looked at. I don't know if the leadership group, has any thoughts on any of those, but that's what, kind of Mike and I and Brendan and Kim had come up with for Great Streets.
I like it. And this may come as a surprise, Seth, because you and I have talked about a lot of these things already. But I mean, I think a lot of it makes sense. I love the idea of trying to figure out how we incorporate green infrastructure into our engineering stuff. It makes a lot of sense moving forward as a city. I would really rather be on the cutting edge of stuff and lead by example than be following everyone 20 years down the road. So I really like that idea. Doing a thoroughfare plan makes a lot of sense. It's something that we just need. It needs to be done. And a lot of those other points, it just makes a lot of sense in terms of planning for the future. It's one of those things that, a lot of it's planning, right? So it doesn't have a lot of visual impact right off the bat, but it's really going to improve the city long-term. It's going to make the city a lot more healthy and a lot more attractive for future development. So I really like it. I think my one critique of it would be, as much as I love the idea of burying all the overhead infrastructure and wires, it's pretty expensive. And I don't know how realistic it is over the short term, maybe on extremely long term. I love the idea of it. If we can do it, let's do it. But I think that might be something that's cost prohibitive for the short term. But again, I think it makes all the sense in the world. And we can figure out a way to pay for it. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, because that's something that could, almost looking at, like we were talking about sidewalks earlier, of doing it in pieces. Is that potentially cost prohibitive there to, say, okay, it might even be like, to say we're going to have 70% of this done of the city of the overhead done in 25 years, you know, so I know obviously that we're dealing with the utility companies or something like that, but you know, is that something almost that could be spread out, kind of like what we were talking about earlier with sidewalks and things of filling in those gaps over a time period?
I think that's the only realistic way that you're ever going to accomplish it, Brendan, is by doing it exactly how you just described. I think probably the first thing that you're going to have to do is do an inventory of all the overhead wires in the city, so we actually have a good idea. And I apologize if you guys can hear my dogs in the background.
You're good.
I apologize.
Background.
It's better than the 10-year-old walking in here a little bit ago. But I think we have to do an inventory of what we have out there first. And I think that would be the first step. And then we need to really, you know, kind of nail down the utility companies on what is the actual cost of doing this. You know, and kind of, you know, do a cost analysis of what the benefit is doing, you know, short, you know, little bunches, and, you know, what's the best way, you know, the most bang for your buck, if you will. So if you're ever going to accomplish it, you're going to have to be realistic and say it's going to take 25, 30, 35 years. I mean, that's the only way it's ever going to happen.
Is that something we would have to, you know, fund completely ourselves, or is that something that utility companies or any other sources would potentially fund?
Well, I can tell you from my experience, when we did it along Montgomery Road in Madera, that it was a partnership with the utility company. I mean, because they had incentive to bury all of those wires as well. So, and Jack, is that something that we can require, or do we already require in new developments for the utilities to be put underground? We do? Okay, good.
Yes. Yeah. And I think we put that in the code about 2 years ago.
Okay,
2 or 3
great.
years ago. Yeah.
Okay, so overhead wires along Main Street. So if we are going to try to put sidewalks in wherever they're not, is that going to be an issue later on when they go to bury the wires? Or is it something that should be done before we put the sidewalks in?
I think it's something that we're going to want to do, you know, either before or during the project. I mean, I think if we're going to do phase 2 of the streetscape, I think we definitely want to bury the utilities. I think that would be something that we would want to incorporate with the plan. I think moving forward, obviously anything that we do, we want to make sure that we bury the utilities wherever it's possible.
Good question, Mindy. Hey, can I throw a question up here? For people who didn't go to planning school, like me, can you explain why the thoroughfare plan, can you explain why that's important? I mean, it makes sense to me when you read it, but just maybe explain how that could improve us, our community.
Well, Jack, I mean, I'll defer to you, but what I can tell you is that so the thoroughfare plan and Plan Clayton would really go hand in hand in helping us to find the best places for development to go within the city. Jack, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, but I mean, very basic, high level, that's what it is. They go hand in hand together.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Seth would probably be the best person to answer that because he's a lot smarter with planning than I could ever hope to be.
Well, I would just say this, I think the county's thoroughfare plan, although attempted to kind of identify right-of-ways in the city of Clayton, probably done when we were Randolph Township, most of it. I think it's just an opportunity to update, kind of the priority or the functionality of the roads that are in the city. And as development occurs, then if we've established what right of way needs to be on, say, Hoke Road, as development occurs, we can say, okay, well, we don't have this amount of right of way, we need it. So that's something that we would expect you to kind of donate to the city as part of the development. And it gives us a place to put things like sidewalks, street furnishing, street lighting, and all of that. So it kind of goes hand in hand with planning for future development so that we can meet the objectives of Plan Clayton and the things that are important to us as a city. Does that make more sense, Dan?
Yeah.
And I can give you a real life example. So when we were doing the Goodwill project, honestly, I can't even tell you what the county thoroughfare plan calls for right there, but it didn't call for the right of way to be as wide as we were envisioning for future growth. So part of the development process when it was going before planning commission and city council was staff requested that Goodwill would donate 15 foot of their land for future right of way. Because obviously staff was anticipating that there would be a future widening project along Hoke Road, and we were going to be looking at putting a multi-use path along that area. So that was one of the conditions of the process, and Goodwill agreed to doing it. If we have a thoroughfare plan in place, it makes those types of requirements when developers coming in to do a project a lot easier. It kind of removes the whole negotiation out of it. You can just say, listen, the thoroughfare plan calls for this. We need you guys to give this much right of way to us. So it's a tool for us to be able to, as Seth said, put in place the different pieces that you need for future growth, and to anticipate future infrastructure needs, and to be able to have the property in place so that you can do those necessary improvements to the infrastructure.
Jack, this is me putting on councilman hat here. For that, I mean, I remember us going back to when you brought up, hey, we got to now do the codes after the development plan. You're like, oh, okay, that costs this much and takes about a year or so. Thoroughfare plan, what timeline and approximate cost? Do you know that? For us, what that would be?
I don't know it. Seth may have an idea. Honestly, it's one of the reasons I've never brought it back up to council, because I thought you guys may be getting some planning fatigue on some of the costs. And I thought maybe we could kind of, just keep moving forward with where we are at. I wanted to give you guys a couple of years before we ask for another big ticket item. But Seth, do you have any idea what a thoroughfare plan would cost?
I don't have an exact figure, Brendan, but I would say it's going to be south of the zoning code for sure in Clayton. We would work with the city engineer really to put that together. That's something they could do. We'll just have to get a proposal or a quote from them for what that would cost. But it's not going to be on the level of a zoning code. That's a massive update. And of course, Plan Clayton.
I remember, zoning code, it's about 100,000 and anticipated a year. Obviously, a few things have caused some delays, but yeah, so it's good to know that would be a cheaper and quicker process.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Seth.
Go ahead, Jack. You were probably going to say the same thing I am, so go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say for the other people on the meeting that may not know. So the zoning code was $120,000, and Plan Clayton was $75,000. Although we paid for the majority of the Plan Clayton with a $50,000 grant from the Montgomery County Land Bank. But so that's just kind of as a point of reference what those plans cost.
And then I was just going to add the zoning code update. You guys, council, will probably be seeing that in most likely June. So it's coming.
Jack and Seth, is it also fair to say that, and again, that's not cheap, this thoroughfare plan wouldn't be cheap, but could you make the case that if that was done correctly, it may help us land another Caterpillar or something on that? I mean, it could help us make the case to a larger employer that they should come here.
I mean, I think any planning initiatives you take on show the level of sophistication of the city in which someone's looking for property. Would a thoroughfare plan bring a CAD or something on that level? Probably not, but it is a planning tool, as Jack said.
But would it tell you what you lack in order to get the next one, in a way?
I don't know if it were. I think we have a pretty solid understanding on what we lack.
Yeah.
Okay.
It really is. It's just to tell us, what the thoroughfares need to look like in the future in terms of size, width, and those types of things. And and Seth had talked about the access plans also. So I think that's something that could also go hand in hand.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
And Dan, are you thinking maybe more of like functional classification of a roadway and maybe roadways that are overtaxed with traffic, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, kind of in that thing. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Hey, Mayor Mike, do you have anything you want to add to this one?
No, I think I think we covered everything, that I, you know, again, I think the discussion kind of vetted out some of the organic order that we go through here. I think we need to do these studies probably before we do anything. So I think that's something that we need to get on the docket, you know, as soon as we can, because it sounds like, you know, we got some work to do there before we would, you know, entertain building anything else. So.
Gotcha. And I think it's also fair to say that a lot of communities struggle with the same, you know, the whole above ground utility stuff is something that every community is dealing with, right? So it's not unique just to Clayton, obviously, that kind of stuff. Okay. Well, good. Well, any other thoughts on this area before we go to the connected parks? Okay. All right. Well, Seth, I'll go ahead and maybe just kind of reiterate a little bit what we've talked about so far in this one. And Seth Powers, tell me if you think I'm overstating something, or if you want to add something when I'm done. But I think one of the things that Seth and I spent a good amount of time on, both Seths actually, was that, and this is a longer term goal, so it's not low hanging fruit, but it's something I think we hope that the council will you know, try to give some thought to, and that's trying to connect the community to that regional bike path system. We spent some time with the chief planner for Five Rivers Metro Parks, and you'll see on that spreadsheet that it's not cheap to get the bike path from Riverside Drive and Shoot Mill Road. They've kind of come up with a path in their mind, and it's about an $8 to $10 million project. 25% local match, and you know, as you can see there, we've kind of suggested that the northern communities should really lock arms and try to advocate for that together. What Metro Parks is trying to do, just for everybody's knowledge, is they're trying to take the system that exists and really fill in the gaps, kind of extend the arteries to make the gaps go to where they think they should go, and they really believe that that our community could stand to be a lot better connected. So I'll leave that as it is, but again, that's a long-term issue that's really kind of a more regional issue in nature. The other thing that Seth and I talked about was investigating the potential of Hardscrabble Park to offer more services beyond their current use. And again, that could be, you know, as we've all said in years past, that facility has been full of a lot of great amenities for the community, particularly for little leagues and that kind of thing. But the question would be, could there be some better and higher use that could still do that, but maybe do more things? Same thing goes for Meadowbrook. We know that the council's talked about this issue a lot, and the intent is to keep that as a golf course, which is great. But the question is, could there be some other services that get added on to that facility that could continue to benefit the community? And then the last thing I will just say, beyond just a couple of the normal things that the city would, like, for example, you know, Seth Palace, you know, really just encourage the city to, you know, as we should, is just to take your existing budget and try to get the best bang for the buck. But the last thing we talked about was really trying to focus, for example, on Westbrook Park from Westbrook Road. Could you provide better access to that park? Because when you get up close to it, the fear is that if you don't live in the neighborhood near there, you may not know it exists. So I don't know, Seth, do you think I missed anything there?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well.
Okay. Good. Any comments on that?
I think you guys summed it up pretty well. I think staff, you know, holds the same sentiments that you guys, you know, summarized. Everything that you guys said makes a lot of sense. You know, in terms of the regional bike path connecting, I think that's something we definitely need to work towards making happen in the future at some point. I think we need to take an approach that it's not a make it happen. I think that would do a lot to help our North Main corridor. So, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of, you know, programming Clayton Park or Hardscrabble. I think that's definitely some different. I think that's really good points, and I think there's some opportunities there for us, you know, to work with you guys and to work with the Parks Commission on figuring out some different ideas for down there. I know playing Clayton was one of the things that was called out in playing Clayton was putting a horseshoe pit down there, and that's something that the Parks Commission has actually reached out to some people in the community, and that there's some potential donations for something like that at the old basketball courts. But I think there's other opportunities there. So working with you guys and at the Parks Commission to figure out where some of those opportunities are is really good. I guess Westbrook, the access, I think you hit the nail on the head. Tons of people drive past that thing on a daily basis and see the one disc golf basket by Westbrook, but they have no idea how to get back there. So I think that's a really significant, I don't want to say significant challenge, but I think, but it's tough. It's tough because, you know, we've talked about, you know, is there a way to access it off Westbrook where you're coming down a hill, and if you have, you know, a way to turn into the park from Westbrook, people that are going east on Westbrook, you know, if they slam the brakes on, you know, can an accident happen? But are there different opportunities to figure something out? And I think that's something that staff and you guys, you know, can work together to try to figure out, because I think those are that's a real opportunity to really open up the amount of people that use that park, because it's a, you know, we've put significant resources into that over the last 2 years, upgrading the disc golf course, putting new benches, putting new waste receptacles. You know, we're looking at possibly upgrading the bathrooms there, making those ADA compliant. So there's, you know, there's resources that are going into that park, and we want the community to use it. And you're right, most people don't know how to get there. And the other thing is, you know, can we, for a short-term solution, can we maybe fix that with some wayfinding signs and help people better find the entrance today while we're working on, you know, a long-term solution to better access through wayfinding. So, and, you know, Meadowbrook, I guess my one question to you guys for Meadowbrook is, what do you guys do? Do you guys have ideas on ways that we can, you know, use Meadowbrook better for the community at large?
Yeah, maybe we can. Oh, good.
What I was going to say was, is there a way to increase parking options for it, either off of Westbrook itself, or what are our thoughts on that? Because that's the first challenge, is the parking lot being so small.
You're talking about Meadowbrook?
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about Westbrook Park. I'm sorry.
No. The same thing, Seth, when we were talking about Westbrook Road. I didn't know, I live on Garber, right around the corner from Westbrook Road, and I didn't know how to get into the park until I walked down Cherry Lane with my neighbor that lives off of Cherry Lane, and, you know, found where the park entrance was. But then there is a very small parking lot over there. So if you increase traffic coming in, then I think the parking does become the big issue there.
No, I think Randy and his guys and Seth and myself, we have been discussing increasing and improving the parking at all the parks over the, you know, in the short term. We realize that there's significant opportunity to make the parks have better access and to provide better parking opportunities for the community. So we do realize that that's something at every single park we need to improve the parking. So Seth, you were talking about parking at Meadowbrook though?
Correct.
Okay.
Similar challenge though, obviously.
Sure. You know, I think there's probably, you know, it's probably something that we need to look at. You know, is there an opportunity to kind of do what we do when we do the fireworks at Labor Day? There's an old tennis court down there that we do overflow parking there, you know, and throughout the year, there's no other parking, you know, I mean, I'm sorry, that space isn't used for anything else. So is there an opportunity to create some additional parking there? Again, I think it comes down to money. And I think we've had the conversation internally quite a bit about exactly what you just asked is, you know, how do we, you know, increase the parking? Because when we do some events there, like when we do Taste of Northmont and say it's snowing outside, and so we're taking up 20, 30 spots with snow because we're plowing snow, we're killing our parking, and people can't park all the way down at the bottom and walk up when in the snow. So we're limiting ourselves on, you know, the type of events that we can have. And when we do the Northmont Community Market at Meadowbrook during the winter time, again, that's another concern is, you know, the parking. So I think it's something that we can look at. I think we're kind of limited because of the way the golf course is set up, but I think there's possibilities, and then we're just going to have to figure out, you know, financially, you know, what makes sense for us. Rainey, do you have any ideas on the parking?
No, looking at the Northview Park, especially, there isn't even a parking lot at the Northview Park. I mean, I know there's people that want to go up there and drive up there and visit Northview Park. It has a lot of green space. There's some paths we can do. We need to improve the path walking area as well. But I mean, we need to install a parking lot. There isn't any parking at Northview Park. Westbrook Park, I would agree with that. Jack and I have met with Disc Golf Association. I think it's Dayton Disc Golf Association, and they want to start having leagues there. But man, I don't know how you would ever park that many cars there during a league. You just couldn't do it right now. So yeah, there's a lot of thought on how we can do it. You know, again, it comes down to funding.
And the reality is that we have to, I mean, if we're going to program these parks, you know, for example, what Rainey just said, if we're going to have the Disc Golf Association do leagues, we have to increase the parking capabilities because we don't want the parking to be overflowing into the neighborhoods. We don't want people parking in front of people's houses and then, you know, walking 2 blocks to the park. Because although, you know, some people may not have an issue with walking, some people have issues with strangers parking in front of their house all the time. Even though it's public right of way, that's just a realistic concern that will probably get voiced to the city and city council. So
that's exactly what does happen, Jack. I've talked to several people up there when they have a large amount of people come play, the cars, you know, they're just parked on the streets.
Yeah, so I mean, it's something that we need to find a solution to, but again, it goes into the cost of it. But I mean, the one thing I'll say is, I mean, Rainey and I have been talking about this for the last 3 years, and you know, I think we're hopeful that in the near term, you know, maybe we'll have some opportunities to maybe tackle 1 or 2 of those things. It obviously comes down to funding, though. If Kevin would start printing more money for us, it'd be a lot easier.
You know what? It just occurred to me. You know what's funny? I live in Clayton, so I'm biased, yes. But it occurred to me from an urban planning perspective, my days at Toledo, the city of Clayton and the neighborhoods in these 5 parks are all centrally located in a way in the middle or centrally located in a neighborhood. So you have a neighborhood with a park, and those neighborhoods, if you did a survey of those individuals, probably don't want more Wayfair or signage, because what we just talked about, Cherry Lane and all those streets would become parking lots, so to speak. So I'm wondering, I'm going to be obnoxious here for a second, Jack, what would be the answer for some of these parks? A parking garage? And it'd have to be a little narrow one because of the amount of space that's available with regards to homes buttressing all of these parks, with the exception maybe of Hardscrabble. But even that one, you could argue, is in the middle of an older neighborhood, so to speak. But that one has the best parking, at least in my opinion, with the exception of the golf course. I cannot wonder if, first, is that property available? And the answer is probably no, at the corner of Westbrook and Garber, that large grassy knoll there.
Oh, yeah, right.
I'm sorry, yeah, Denley. Is that a privately owned? How come that's never been developed? I guess I'm curious first.
It's privately owned. My guess, and this is just purely a guess based on what I've seen throughout the city, is that I'm guessing there's bedrock issues there, or there's some other factor on why it's never been developed. Almost every open piece of property that is in the southern area of the city that's not developed, when it's smack in the middle of other developments, there's some sort of bedrock issue or some other factor on why it was never developed. That's my guess. I don't know if that's true. But I don't think it's a factor of lack of utilities, because everything around there has utilities. I don't think it's an issue of access, because, you know, it's right there in the corner. There's actually another 15 acres down Garber on the east side, probably about a quarter of a mile from that intersection, that's never been developed either. And then if you go up Westbrook, there's about, I think, 26 or 30 acres of wooded as you go up the hill. And I've heard from everyone around there that that's never been developed because of bedrock issues. So that's my guess. And that was a very long-winded guess. I'm sorry, Seth.
Oh, you're fine. I'm being long-winded as well. I just kind of wonder if we're trying to solve a problem that can't be solved and the community may not want to solve, which is how to increase traffic, foot traffic, and drivable traffic to these parks that are centrally located in neighborhoods. The safety aspect, first time a child gets injured in a car who's driving through those neighborhoods because we put on an event. I cannot wonder if the solution is to seek a new park, new property that has disc golf, because some of these things aren't terribly expensive. The land, obviously, is probably what's most expensive, but just throwing that out there because I'm thinking of these parks that I drive through, and I don't know if parking increasing would solve the problem.
No, Seth, I think frankly, I think you're onto something there. And that it's identifying new green space where it makes sense. And maybe where it makes sense is where the city can do something that can draw people to it for all the right reasons, but they don't have to spend another big bucket of money. Maybe that's the equation. I don't know, but I don't think you're wrong at all in thinking that way.
That's also along the thought that I was having as you were talking with hardscrabble. I'm not sure that the answer is like to have more amenities. To me, the most potential we have is hardscrabble because it's the largest. But to me, it's like literally about 50 years outdated. And the reason I say that is because it looks about the same as it did when I was a kid. We still got the old wooden shack down there where we used to have, the summer recreation programs. There's no bridges there anymore. Used to be 3 bridges there. The parking along when you drive down, you still got the paved driveway and like the cul-de-sac at the end, but you got a lot of gravel on the sides with old telephone poles basically to as bumpers or whatever. And to me, I'm just thinking, it'd be somewhat kind of easy to wipe the slate clean. It'd be a little more expensive to redo it. But I think if we just made it nicer down there versus bringing more amenities in. Hey, when I was a kid, we had a horseshoe pit in my yard. We used to play that all the time, but I don't know if that's going to bring anybody down there or not. It may. I don't know how popular that would be, but why not just make, just envision a large green space. We got the ball diamonds down there, and I think those guys kind of help us take care of that. But, the last time I was down there, they look kind of shabby. Maybe they're better during the summer. I don't know. The restrooms need redone. We need bridges, and we just need some cleanup, basically, modernization. And to me, that would be probably good enough. Like I said, I don't know about more amenities. That may or may not draw me down there, but I might go down there if there was, if we had another couple shelters down there, go down there, cook out on the grill or something like that. I might do that. But
I think from a staff standpoint, and I'll just speak for myself, I think for me personally, it goes back to what the Plan Clayton document is all about. It's about providing staff with a vision and a roadmap for the future. And I think one of the reasons that parks has been a concentration over the last few years is because when we did all the public input exercises, the surveys, the community stakeholder interviews, the SWOT exercises, one of the most significant feedbacks that we got was about parks. And the community, almost second to none, was they wanted us to improve our existing parks and make it more walkable and to be able to connect them, which is, I think, one of the reasons why you guys had the subcommittee for connected parks, because that was the feedback that we received as a city from the community. The community is asking us to improve the parks. And I think the points that you make, Seth, make tons of sense, and Mike. I think it makes a lot of sense to improve what we have there and worry about maybe some of the community programming. I won't say that. I think community programming is essential from a community outreach standpoint on what makes a city strong. It's about having your different community outreach. And that's why I think some of our programs in Meadowbrook have been so successful. We've done, the movie in the park, the Labor Day fireworks, the Easter egg contest, the breakfast with Santa, the Northmont Market in the wintertime. I think those are important outreach opportunities. And I don't want to overhaul the parks, but I think providing opportunities for our community at large to get out into the parks so that they're aware that they're there, just for recreational and for health purposes. I think it was vitally important during COVID that our residents knew that there was opportunities out there so they could go and exercise and be outside. I don't think it's economically feasible for us to do a complete overhaul of the park system. I think it does make economic sense to slowly improve the parks, make those upgrades where it's necessary. We already have existing walking paths in most of those parks, but it probably makes sense to resurface those walking paths so they're safer. The walking paths are already there, but let's make them safer for the community. And if we have to expand them, maybe make them a little bit larger so that people can get a little better exercise. That's what we can do. That's why we put benches there, because that was identified in Plan Clayton as, so we provided opportunities for seniors and retirees and individuals with different types of abilities, so that if they're on the walking paths and they need to sit down, the benches are there so that, they can take that rest. And so we're trying to make the parks feel more open to everyone. I agree with you 100%, Seth, that I think we may get some pushback on some of the wayfinding signs in the neighborhoods, but at the same time, these are community parks for the entire city. And I think, again, this is me personally, I think we kind of have a responsibility so that we can make sure that all of our residents are able to find these amenities that are in the city. Everyone's taxpayer dollars goes to, keep these parks up and operational. I don't think we need to be obnoxious with the signage, but I think we could do a better job. I think providing better parking makes a lot of sense. And, maybe we don't encourage, huge festivals or, things in the parks, but if we're going to be able to alleviate some of the parking that's already happening in the neighborhoods, because of, say, for example, the disc golf at Westbrook, if we can create another parking area, which I think Rainey and I have identified a location for that at Westbrook, I think it makes a lot of sense if we can find it in the budget to expand that parking there, so that maybe we can take care of one of the problems that's already existing in the neighborhood, which is there's overflow parking in front of people's houses. I think there's some opportunities for some community outreach. One of the things we were going to do last year was going to partner with the Disc Golf Association, do a family day at Westbrook centered around the new disc golf baskets. And we were going to look at purchasing, some discs to hand out for kids. The Disc Golf Association was going to come out and teach lessons for families, try to get more awareness about, disc golf as an activity. I think those are good opportunities, to really highlight what we have existing in the city. And I think that's part of what attracts new residents to the city. And that's, really honestly, that's what development's about. It's about making your community as attractive as possible. So I think if we can improve the parks and we can find ways to connect them to one another, and then when we have new development, we need to really talk with these developers about putting new parks in these new developments. That's one of the things, Seth and I talk about every time we talk to developers. If they're looking at doing, say 100 units, we're asking where the park's going to be at, and we're asking where the sidewalks are going to be at, because that is what people are looking for. And I think that really goes towards development, is really making your community as attractive as possible and providing all those different types of amenities. So, I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I think your points are well taken for me, Seth and Mike. And I personally, I think we need to continue to concentrate on improving the things that we can as much as possible.
And Mike, I want to just let you be aware that there are going to be new restrooms at Hardscrabble. We took some of the CARES money that we got for the COVID relief, and we took out the wood dividers, and we're putting in more a solid surface that can be sanitized easier. You're going to have new toilets in there that are automatic, censored hands-free flushing. We also went and looked at the wood bleachers we had. We've replaced those with metal bleachers because you can sanitize those, as well as the dugout boards that kids sat on were wood. We've replaced that with a composite material because it can be sanitized. So we did utilize CARES money for a big chunk down there at Hardscrabble. So that, I know Joel is working on the putting in the restroom, some of the toilets tomorrow and stuff to get this ready for the baseball season down there.
Good.
And I think we actually, Amanda, myself, Jack, we all had a meeting down there to take a look at what we can do with the parking lots, because obviously, just like you said, Mike, that gravel being drug all over the place doesn't make it look very appealing in them old posts, which is the next project that those parks guys are going to be working on, is removing those posts. But we looked at maybe new paving down through there to keep that water from washing down over to that first field on your left. The field across the creek, the Wildcats field, that's been a very popular field for the Little League kids because they love that. And, of course, it's select baseball, and that's kind of the thing now, select baseball. That rec balls almost went bye-bye, and they've had a lot of fun over there on that park. And the Big Diamond, and just like you said, it just don't seem to be as much baseball as there used to be, but it's still a pretty big hit down there.
Yeah. Okay.
I agree with you, Mike, regarding Hardscrabble. Based on what Jack said, this seems more strategic, kind of longer term, but that kind of being the centerpiece of the community, Hardscrabble, because of the size, the history, the name itself. And I like the idea of that. And Jack, something you were talking about came to mind with regards to Wayfair and signage and, outreach and engagement. I wonder about having more community opportunities beyond just centered on religious stuff, Santa Claus, Easter egg hunt. Those are awesome. But something on the heels of, I'm thinking like a pizza challenge, something in the summer, setting aside COVID for a second. I wonder about opportunities like that to kind of get the word out about our parks. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's awesome. So last year, the goal was to have one community event for the city every single month. And for the summer months, we were really going to concentrate on the parks. And this is kind of being driven through the Parks Advisory Commission. Couple of the ideas that we had was that first one was that family day at Westbrook Park, centered around the disc golf. Another idea that we had was called Kickball with Cops down at Hardscrabble, and see if we could get some police or maybe some other people to come out from the city and bring the kids out. And just kind of have a kickball tournament and, have some pizzas there and what have you. We've thrown around ideas with ice cream socials. We do movie in the park at Meadowbrook in August. But I think, Seth, I think it's an awesome idea. And I think the Parks Advisory Commission would agree with you. Again, we were going to try to do two different events last year during the summertime at the parks. And then COVID kind of screwed that whole thing up. And I don't know where we're going to be at this year. I would, personally, I like the idea of doing a family day centered around the disc golf because we have an organization that's willing to donate their time and help us with the Disc Golf Association. So I personally like that. It's something the Parks Advisory Commission really seemed to enjoy the idea of. I couldn't agree with you more, though. I think it's something that we need to do more of. If we could do one event in the parks, every single month, and alternate the different parks. Do one event in Hardscrabble, do one at Northview, do one in Westbrook. It makes a lot of sense. So I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, I like that. I like that rotation, definitely.
Mike Stevens, I would say one thing. I think you made a good point about when we put on this recommendation to offer more amenities. Maybe the better way to put that, I think what you're saying is like the right amenities, right?
Right.
So maybe we could make a note of that.
Yeah.
More is not always better. Maybe it's just improving what you have, right? So, or new is not always better.
What happened to pickleball?
I love the idea of pickleball.
Somebody, our whole last meeting, we talked a lot about pickleball, but nobody has mentioned it this time.
I will say, Mindy, one thing, and Seth made a good point. those of us, well, I speak for myself as a graying person here, maybe pickleball might, yeah, I'd love that. I'm not sure that, I guess when we, to your point, and it's supposedly it's like the fastest growing sport in the country, I think. So it's a really, really, but I think there's also a case to be made that it's almost like you probably need a few different eggs in a few different baskets here to, to just offer stuff that all kinds of people want. But you're right. It's a fair point. People are building these courts everywhere, aren't they?
Well, I believe they are. And Dan,
Yeah.
that may be something that's a low hanging fruit, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't know how much cost is associated with building a pickleball court. I don't think it's probably going to be one of your more expensive items than some of the things that we've discussed. And I think there's probably some area at Hardscrabble that we could find a location for it.
I think Meadowbrook already has tennis courts there, don't they? I mean,
Well, we have the old tennis courts, and
update that
yeah.
to ball or something, or
I mean, the thing with the old tennis courts in Meadowbrook is that we were just talking about using for a parking lot, but but seriously,
There
I
is
mean,
tennis
listen,
courts at Westbrook.
what's that?
There's tennis courts at Westbrook Park.
True.
Yeah, at Westbrook.
that would
But
get, like he said, to hit different groups of people. Do we have anything for retired people that like to play pickleball or like to get out and
Good point.
do some little exercise? They can't do really basketball, I wouldn't think, and they aren't going to probably play baseball. And what else is out there? I don't know.
Where I live over here in Valley Brook, we have two tennis. Well, actually, we have 4 tennis courts. One we turned into a playground, but one virtually no one was playing tennis, so they turned into a pickleball court last year. And basically, I mean, our tennis court was in good shape, so all we had to do was paint it. But there's people over there playing, and I, to be honest with you, I've never been over there to see who it is, but there's people over there playing all the time, groups of people. I'm assuming it's probably people that live here, but it could be, could be others looking to get out. I see them playing at the Y, every day.
It's a super popular activity.
It is. I mean, in Florida, it's like the biggest thing ever.
I personally love the idea, and I think it's something that we may be able to identify one of the parks, a place to put it.
That'd be great.
I can't remember where I was, but I just saw a hybrid tennis pickleball court. It had lines for both. So
Yeah, that's what ours has.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking with the Meadowbrook. But if you're going to make it a golf or a parking lot, that's not good.
Okay, we had a very large pickleball group in Madera, and that's what we did was we striped our tennis courts for both after a long drug out fight over whether it should be pickleball or tennis courts. But
Yeah.
that's what we ended up doing was striping for both.
That's what we did here too.
That's great. Well, anybody else have anything for the 4 items? This has been a great discussion, like every meeting has been. I know maybe before we leave, I think what I'm going to do is ask Seth Dorman to go over the next stage of the process, which I think is really kind of winnow these down into priorities that we can present to the council. Is there anything that the committee members would like to add about any of these 4 goals or anything?
Hey, there's just one thing I want to throw in there. First of all, I appreciate everyone's time and work on this. It's really great. But again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I'm going to continue to push for some things that we can do now. I understand, a lot of this stuff's big picture and it's 5, 10 years, 20 years down the road, like we talked about. I understand that part, but I think it's important that our city, we show the residents that we're doing things. We can tell them all day long, we're planning, we have a plan, here's the 10-year plan. But the truth is, they want to know, what are you doing now? And I think it's important that we show them some things that we're working on. And that's why I'm not necessarily short-sighted, because I understand that some of this stuff takes time, But I think we need to look at this low hanging fruit, some of these things we've identified, and I think we need to start doing it. And again, I understand our staff works their butts off. I get that. They're working every day, harder than I ever thought about working, but we need to add some of these things in that we can actually, get some visuals out there. And I think it'll go a long way for us. So that's my overall thought.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
And I think, I'm sorry to interrupt here.
No,
I think having, Amanda and I have had this conversation several times, we, over a period of the last 6 years, I've been here about 6 or 7 years, and over the last 6 or 7 years, we've accomplished a lot when it comes to roads and curbs. If I remember the numbers right, we have 260 roads, and granted, a lot of those are small roads in the city of Clayton. We've paved 200 roads in the last 6 years. Now that was part of that program that we started with the curbs and the roads. Maybe it's time to put a little more emphasis, and it's going to be a call for our city manager. Put a little bit more of that money into those, maybe a small section of sidewalk or something each year, and just tackle those. I don't think it's undoable, Mike. So, I think it's some areas that now that we've played a little bit of catch up, and we're still getting some grant money, maybe it's an area that we can look at. Biting off little pieces like that. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Anybody else have any other comments?
I would like to make a quick clarification. Earlier, I told you, and Amanda wins on this one, that the state wouldn't have too much say-so on that speed limit on 48. While I was in the meeting, I texted Matt Perrell, and Mr. Perrell is very good, and the engineer he is says, yes, we are the final approvers based on the speed study. So state would have some say-so. Now, he did say it's not a difficult challenge, but yeah, they would have the final say-so.
Okay. Thank you, Randy. Thank you. Okay. Seth, do you want to walk us through just the kind of, I guess, if it's a baseball game, we're probably in the 7th inning, right?
Time to stretch.
All right. Well, we're getting close to the 9th, and I guess maybe could you talk us through just how kind of how we get to the point where we give a prioritized list to the mayor and the city council?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think tonight's discussion was really important to kind of, we've been dreaming for 3 months, so we wanted to put kind of a shot of reality into our dreams in terms of what we think we can do and maybe things that aren't as attainable right away, things that we need to phase. I guess I didn't hear anything that abjectly was coming off the list from the discussion tonight, so that's good. What I'm going to do is probably tomorrow or later this week, maybe even early next week, is just send out a final list to the whole implementation committee. I would ask that each of your subcommittees get together in the time between now and in our May meeting, and just kind of run through the exercise of scoring these projects based on what you've heard tonight, based on our discussions over the last 4 months. So that, because what I would like to do in the May meeting is to do the official scoring, right, which will help us to prioritize those projects and ultimately will inform our 5-year implementation plan that we present to city council. And I would love to do that, in June if it's at all possible. Certainly sometime in the summer, I'd like to present that report. So that would be your homework assignment, I guess, for this month is to get together in your subcommittees. Let's go through scoring as a subcommittee, and then we'll come together as a full group in May and see what we can come up with for a priority list.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Can I add here, looking at our next meeting, will there be because obviously this was larger, and I think it was brought up at the last one here, the possibility of us actually meeting in person. Obviously this one, there was the issue with we're going to be over the 10-person limit with the staff, but we'd be at 8 or 9 I think I was counting here. It'd probably be 9 of us have, with yourself and Barb from the city being here. So do we want to look into maybe, doing that in person? Obviously with the Zoom option, if someone can't make it or, isn't comfortable with that.
Yep. I would say that's very doable, and I think a great idea.
I have a question. Our next meeting is going to be on May 12th, right?
That's correct.
The big meeting. Okay. Well, that's my birthday.
Oh.
For one. Yay.
All right.
I'll bring you a cake, Kim.
And for 2, I'm supposed to be in Kentucky visiting my son. So
Okay.
I'll be going down in the morning and won't be back until late. I can try to get on again on my phone like I did before, but I'm going to have a 3-year-old grandbaby with me.
So we pushed this meeting up a week. Could we push the May meeting up a week and call it May 5th? Does that work for everyone else?
Okay with me. I already had my baby.
That works for me if
That would
it's
work
not
for me.
an inconvenience for anyone.
No, that's great. Really, that's great.
It's Cinco de Mayo. Can we meet at La Fiesta? No.
Yeah.
Don't get a lot more than 10 people there that
There
day.
you go.
Yeah.
That's great.
Would you all be in your right mind on that day?
We might come up with some really interesting things there.
Where are we meeting?
I just guess it's council chambers.
Yeah. So we would meet here at Government Center.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I'm good there, Kim, and if the majority's good, then let's do it. And
Derek,
Brendan, I think you're right, Brendan. If we can be together for that meeting, I think it'll go a long way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, obviously we'll still have the Zoom option for anyone who wants to
Sure.
get in and anyone who might be able to not attend or not comfortable with it.
Okay. Good.
Does that date work for Seth Palace and Derek? I guess I didn't hear from those two.
That'll work for me.
Great.
Yeah, sorry, tech issues. Yes, that works for me. Oh, geez.
Okay, so May 5th at 7 p.m., our normal time. Does that work, or do we want to think about an earlier time since we'll be scoring?
Maybe bump it up half an hour, 6:30.
6 o'clock, maybe?
Yeah.
Let's do that. Is that okay with everybody?
I'm
Yep.
fine with that.
Yep, 6 o'clock.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
6 o'clock, am I hearing that consensus there?
that'd be great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so May 5th, 6 p.m.
So then when do you want our priority list to you?
I had kind of spelled out like a week ahead, since we're pushing the meeting. Could we say, gosh, I was gonna say April 30th, but what about end of day on the 3rd, say May 3rd?
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Great, thank you all.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. Well, any other final comments before we end? Good. All right. Thanks for everybody's great work on this, and look forward to connecting together again on May 5th. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank
Thank
you.
y'all.
All right.
You have a good night.
Thanks,
Night, everyone.
everyone.
Thank you, Kim.
Bye.